Good afternoon, and welcome back to Steps to Health 2021. Today is the last session of the four-part series on basic physical health under the theme of Healthier, Happier You. Steps to Health is a program developed by the Chewelah Seventh-day Adventist Church in Chewelah, Washington, where our mission is revealing Jesus who changes lives. We'd like to welcome you all this afternoon, whether you have just joined us for the first time or you have been with us for the last few sessions. If any of you missed some of our previous presentations, you can view them on YouTube, where we archive our recordings. Just go to YouTube and search us under Chewelah SDA. Chewelah, Chewelah SDA. In our first session, can we have a PowerPoint? In our first session, we presented the concept of New Start. It's an acronym for the 8 basic principles of health. And in our second session, we presented the practical steps to successful weight management, where we provided you with many practical tips. In our last session, which was our third one, we discussed how to combat heart disease, the number one killer in this country as well as worldwide. And in the last half of the last presentation, we touched on the subject of epigenetics, where we learned how our health, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health, can be shaped by the choices we make. The Bible says in Romans 5:12, "Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned." So ever since Adam fell into sin, we have inherited this sinful nature. We have inherited bad genes from our ancestors, and we have this tendency to become selfish. But sin is a choice that we make. The Bible is clear on the definition of sin. It says in 1 John 3:4, "Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law." So even if we have inherited a sinful nature, we don't have to become selfish if we choose not to. Well, it's easier said than done. We can choose that way, but we don't have that power to do what we want to do what we want to do, and not to do what we don't want to do. But when Jesus comes into our heart and his grace and love reigns in our heart, we receive that power from God. It says in Romans 5:17, "For if by one man's offense death reigned by one, much more they which receive abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness shall reign in life by one, Jesus Christ." That's the promise from our God in his word. Let's start our program with a short prayer. Our Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather again. As we learn more about our health, we pray that you bless us, that we may glorify you in all things we do. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. Now, we are still offering this free DVD called Amazing Health Facts, featuring the New Start, 8 Basic Principles of Health. It is yours for free, just for asking. Just write to us at stepstohealthchewelah@gmail.com. That is stepstohealthchewelah@gmail.com. This is offered by the courtesy of the Three Angels Ministry located in Chewelah, Washington. You can also write to us at the same email address for any questions or comments that you may have. Now, today's presentation is Natural Remedies, and it is presented by Rosanna Reed. Rosanna is going to be presenting some of the simple home remedies that we can use right away for our common ailments. Rosanna is a registered nurse. She used to be a head nurse for the busy ICU in a large university hospital in California. So she's well acquainted with the care of the acutely ill patients, but she feels it's more important for us to know how to take care of ourselves with simple remedies, because our body is fearfully and wonderfully made by our wise and infinite God. Our body can heal itself if we only restore the basic order of nature. Rosanna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Minami, for that. And we're just very thankful. My husband and I are going to be presenting today the natural remedies that we have used in the past that we've had very good success with. And it's something that anyone can do. It's not difficult. And just, Matt, it does take a little bit of time. And, of course, there's a rest phase after you do a natural remedy. But it really helps open up your airways if you're doing a chest fomentation, which we're going to be demonstrating today. And I want to share a short little story with you. A friend of ours that lives in California, her husband was sick about this time last year, January, and actually he woke up in the morning and he says, I can't breathe. And she, of course, immediately got the instruments and the things that are needed for a hot fomentation, and she applied this to his chest, and in just one treatment, his airways opened up and he was able to breathe freely again. And she did do some follow-up fomentations on him to make sure he was well, but it worked just quickly. And of course, everyone is different. You have to just know that sometimes you have to have medical care. We have many wonderful Christian physicians that help in those situations as well. But yet we want to make sure that we can do what we can at home. I was raised with a lot of little natural remedies at home too, that we'll share a couple of those with you tonight. But some people don't know that children, if they're having snivels or different things, what they can do, and that are just natural without having to go to the emergency room for small things that aren't as difficult to care for. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is actually, I think this is not the first one, but we'll go ahead. The first slide, a little bit of difficulty there. Anyway, we'll go with what you had up there. That's fine. A fomentation is the application of a hot, wet cloth or a towel to the body part. And like I said, we're going to work on my husband's chest this afternoon. And fomentations basically with the application of hot and cold. What it does is it opens up the blood vessels and it constricts and dilates, which means that it moves the blood through your body quickly. It picks up nutrition as it goes through your body, as well as then goes through the lungs, it picks up oxygen. And those two elements are very essential to healing, and it boosts the immune system. So that's why some simple things like this can be used. It removes, fomentations help remove the waste products through the skin by sweating, and it relieves pain in some of the nerves and muscles, as well as it soothes and sedates. And that the soothing sedating is more of a remedy that if someone is quite having an emotional problem or they need to relax or not sleeping well, you can go ahead with the longer period of heat, where what we're doing today is a 3 to 5 minute time of heat application. And then it relieves congestion of the internal organs by increasing blood flow to the surface of the skin. And the effects and duration and intensity of the heat application really from 3 to 5 minutes helps that circulation. It helps also relieve the pain. There are a few things, if you have some inflammation around your lungs, like pleurisy or kidney stone, painful menstruation, they say don't emit the cold. But then the hot application for 6 to 10 minutes for more sedation. And of course, with anything that you do, you don't want to burn the patient, and you don't want to chill them, and we don't want to leave the skin uncovered. And then a fomentation should not be used, of course, if there's some hemorrhaging, or if someone would have diabetes, that they have very delicate skin, or we will be talking about peripheral neuropathy later with the feet, with a hot foot bath, that because with diabetics you have to be careful. Children, you have to be wise too as far as how long you're going to use that fomentation on. Also, I have another little story to tell you about COVID. My husband's brother shared with us recently that there is a small nursing home associated with a school in Tennessee, and their patients, all of their patients got COVID. And they did prayer, and they did fomentations, and vitamin D, and those simple things. 2 did pass away, but all the rest of the patients got well. And see, it was just a real blessing. I believe my husband was reminding me there were like 49 patients there, so that was a real blessing. And then the equipment that is needed would be, of course, and let me show you, talk to you about the picture too that is on your screen right now. In the past, a lot of people, all they had available was like a canning kettle, and so they would get a towel, and they would go ahead and dip the towel in the canning kettle, and then they would wring it out. They'd put it down into the water, wring it out, and then they would come and apply it to the person. Well, now we've found a simple way that really works, and it's much more convenient. We use a bag, and it's just a grocery shopping bag that we microwave. We put water on the towel, and we put it in the microwave for 3 to 5 minutes to make sure it's nice and warm, so there is steam that is actually coming out of it, so it can be applied there. And then we do have some ice water, and I'll be to put on the patient's head, so they make sure we don't have congestion in the brain, and to keep them cool. And then the pillow and the blanket and all that is to keep them comfortable. Washcloth for a cooling compress to his head, and I will be doing that as well. And then the dry towel after we do the fomentation. Then I will be taking the fomentation off and doing a cold rub. And also we make sure that you have the patient drink plenty of water during this time, because you are depleting the fluid, and we want them to be cool with the water as well as rehydrated. Okay, and then the next slide I think is going to be actually doing it. Is that there? So this is my husband, Dave, and of course we've had prayer, and that is one thing that we always want to do, is ask our great physician to bless our treatment, and we have had prayer already, and have the room full of, so it's not having drafts, that it will be free from chill for them, and then have them be comfortable. And as I have the blanket down, I am going to apply a towel on his chest. Actually, I'm going, because the towels are quite, this is a thinner towel. If you do put too hot of a fomentation on, it can go through to the skin quite quickly. And also, because this is warm, it just came out of the microwave. I don't know if you can see the steam or not, but you can also use tongs to put it up on them, if I can get this working, so you don't burn your fingers. Or you can see the steam there, or you can use a mitt. That is also useful. And then we're going to cover it with another towel. And then we're just looking at the time to see about 3 minutes. Okay, and yeah, and then I'm going to open up here this. There we go, for him to drink. Drink water during this time, keep himself hydrated. And then I have the bowl of cold water. I have some ice in there, and this will be applied then to the forehead. And if there's quite a bit of, it's quite cool, so just don't be too chilled. Yeah, I'm going to watch my time here, and then I'm going to keep him warm too. And trying to think. And then after that is on for about 3 minutes, I will be using another cold rag where I actually wipe his chest down to cool him off. And okay. So he's telling me just to let you know that if during this time I need to make sure if it's too hot, let me know. And he says it's not really too bad right now, but I can add another towel if that is the case, that you make sure you have plenty of extra towels. This is one thing that is very important. So, and you go ahead, and I'm just going to pull it down. Yeah, I'm just going to pull it down here and add an extra towel like that, and that way it will not burn the skin. Okay, still keep them warm. And then I found a quote that was really a blessing, and I wanted to share it with you today. It says, "Natural means used in accordance with God's will brings about supernatural results. We ask for a miracle, and the Lord directs the mind to some simple remedy. We ask to be kept from the pestilence that walk in darkness, that is stalking with such power through the world. But we are then to cooperate with God, observing the laws of health and life. Having done all that we possibly can, we are to keep asking in faith for health and strength." And so it's just a real blessing that we can just really have promises that are encouraging to us, and to know that just simple remedies like this and other things that we'll be sharing this afternoon. So now the 5 minutes have gone, and so I'm going to get the other rag. And you can make a mitt with it. It works sometimes like this, and rub them down. I'm going to go ahead and just lay that there. And then I pulled all this back, and he has this t-shirt on for modesty's sake. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just rub him down, and I don't know, he's already pink. I don't know if you can show that or not, but by the next one we do. But just go ahead. Okay, and then I'm going to rub him down with a towel. just dry it off. Okay, and we will put this towel back on but I am going to be changing. I'm going to be changing this one for a new hot towel. And this is warm as well. Well, there we go. You can see the steam coming off the towel, okay? And opening it up a little bit closer here to the top of his chest. Okay, I'm covering him up quickly so we can keep that steam and not have a chill there. Okay, and then we encourage some water. And I'll turn the cool cloth, it's still quite cool to my fingers, so I can turn that over. And that's the advantage to the ice water if it gets too cool. Also, then you don't want the person to overheat. A child especially, you would want to watch them. If you're doing a child, you want to watch them quite closely. You can use a thermometer to keep track of their temperature if you need to. We have not had to do that because we're used to this procedure, but it is good to keep track of that. And especially with a child, you wouldn't want it to go over 103 but the fever, if the temperature does go up, it's helping to get the waste products out and to cleanse the body, and that's what the purpose of this is. And we knew some people that had a steam cabinet, and they would do this kind of thing, and they helped a person one time that was quitting smoking, and they put him in the steam cabinet and basically it was purifying his body and his vessels, the cells, and he actually had a kind of orange come out of him when they would towel him down in that from the nicotine in the tobacco. And so it very much does go through the body, works very nicely to cleanse from waste and poisons, viruses, flu, whatever. Okay. So we're probably only going to do 2 because of time constraint. I don't know here how we're doing, but probably we will not do the 3rd one. I did have another 3rd pack. I will show you that if you do this a lot, I actually have fomentation pads that were made. They're a flannel, and you can use those, but towels work just fine too, because we're trying to show you that it's something you can do at home. You don't have to go out and buy a lot of product. Also, what we are doing is using some of the diagrams, illustrations from Dr. Marianne McNeilis's book. And this is called God's Healing Way. And Dr. Marianne actually has been a missionary in, okay, we got that? And I'll just show you one of the illustrations here too that go along with it, if you can get that. Just shows the dilation and this, I don't know, maybe that's not good. The dilation and constriction of the blood vessels because of how it works in the body. There you go. So the dilation opens up the vessels, constriction, then it sends it through the body, and it's just really wonderful how just simple means can help heal. And anyway, these illustrations, this book was developed by her because she keeps changing it, updating it and everything all the time, because in Cambodia they worked with the refugees over there, and they needed just simple things that they could do for health because they don't have a lot of doctors in that area. And so we are using that. There are other books too, of course, that are available and are helpful. Simple Remedies, and this is Charles Thomas is also a book that was used before for hydrotherapy especially, and this is by Teach Services. So there's several different books you can find information in that would help. Okay, so we're going to finish up now with this treatment. I'm going to get the cold rag again, and if I were to do one more, I would change this. I would get some more cold water there for his head, and I'm going to just take everything down and take it off. Just going to remove it here and just quickly This is the best part, he says. And can you see, okay, can you see the pink? Just do it. We're going to dry him now. Okay. And now the rest phase is an important phase where you actually, let me actually put a towel on him too to keep his chest warm. And the rest phase is for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And that way the treatment can be effective. I will go ahead and flip this over. It still feels cold. I had plenty of ice in that one. And is there any questions out there? Does anyone have any questions? There are no questions at this time? Okay. Well, if you think of anything, we can answer it later on too. And we are blessed again today to have Laura Lee share a recipe with us. She's very talented, and we're very thankful for her, and I am going to give this microphone to her right now. Thank you.
Next PowerPoint slide. Okay, so Laura Lee is going to demonstrate how to cook soul-soothing African peanut stew. You have met Laura Lee before. She's a registered dietitian. She has given us excellent talk in our first session on New Start. And she has also given us cooking demonstration once. So this is another one that she's going to show us. Do you have any comments or questions in the meantime? We'd love to have live interaction from our Zoom audience. Or anyone in the studio. Okay, I think Laura Lee's ready now.
Thank you. The soul-satisfying African peanut stew that we're going to be doing today, thank you, AG, comes from the Oshi Glows website. Oshi Glows, there's 3 different cookbooks by that name, and all of them have really good recipes in them. So I would encourage you to check them out if you're at all interested in this. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn this on. And although you can use oil to fry your onions and garlic, you don't have to. I know people who have heart disease and diabetes, they should be really very careful with the amount of oil that they're using. And so what you can do is use a vegetable broth like I'm going to do. You can even use just plain water, but the broth gives a nice flavor to it. And so just let that heat up a little bit. The first ingredient I'm going to use is 1 medium sweet onion. Now, onions belong to the allium family, and that also garlic belongs to that, chives and leeks. And one study found that people who regularly eat allium vegetables, such as onions and garlic, they had a 79% reduced risk of colorectal cancer. So it's a really good thing to include in our diet. So I'm just going to add this to our pot. Now, the next thing I'm going to add are 3 cloves of minced garlic. Garlic, again, has many wonderful properties. It's known to be anti-cancer. It has antifungal, antiprotozoal, antibacterial properties, and possibly even some antiviral properties as well. Now, one thing that's really important if you're using garlic, whether you chop it or mince it in a garlic press, let it sit for at least 5 to 10 minutes before you add it to whatever you're cooking. The reason we do that is when you give it that time to wait, it develops a substance called allicin. And when we think about the health-promoting qualities of garlic, allicin is the main one that we think about. So I'm just going to add this to our pot here. And I love garlic, so I don't mind using quite a bit of that in my cooking. And then what you'll do is you'll just want it to cook for about 5 minutes or so until the onion looks translucent. So right now it still looks quite white, but once it starts to look more clear, then we're ready for the next step. Again, when you're not using oil, you do want to just kind of keep it stirring. And as you use up the liquid that you have been kind of sautéing it in, then you can just add a little bit more liquid if it starts to stick. In fact, if you like a meaty kind of flavor, not for this dish, but for other dishes, if you do allow it to stick just a little bit, it starts to caramelize the flavors, and then you just add a little bit more, and you can get a really kind of umami or savory type flavor by doing that. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to let this go for 5 minutes. Ideally, that would be great, but the next thing that we're going to do is add some of our vegetables. Now, most of us think of oranges as being a great source of vitamin C, and in fact, just 1 cup of raw oranges contains about 96 milligrams of vitamin C. However, red pepper, just 1 cup of red pepper, it contains almost 100 milligrams more than that. It contains 192 milligrams of vitamin C. Also, the more colors that we can use, the more different nutrients that we're getting. And quite honestly, we eat not only with our taste buds, we also eat with our eyes. So if something looks good, it's going to be far more appealing than something that doesn't look that great. So again, I'll just kind of give that a stir here. And I'm beginning to smell some of that garlic right now. So the next thing I'm going to add here is 1 jalapeno. Now, I know not everybody likes spicy food, and so if you don't like spicy food, you can skip it. It's not a problem. Or you could use half a jalapeno. You know, whatever it is that you like the taste of, because you're the one who's going to be eating this. So let me just add this as well. And by the way, if you have any questions as we're going along, please do send them in for us. We are very happy to answer any questions that you might have. So let me give this a mix as well. Right now it's looking very Christmassy. I've got red and green and a little bit of white in there. So the next thing that I'm going to add is my sweet potato. Now, yams and sweet potatoes are very different things, actually. Yams belong to the lilies and the grasses family, whereas a sweet potato actually belongs to the morning glory family. However, if you're in a normal grocery store and it says sweet potatoes or yams, those terms are actually used interchangeably. Yams are a lot drier, they're a lot starchier than a sweet potato, and you're probably not going to find a real yam unless you go to an ethnic grocery store. Now, as you can see, what I have here for the sweet potatoes, they're a beautiful orange color, and that tells us that it has a lot of beta-carotene. Now, beta-carotene is an antioxidant, and our body converts that into vitamin A. And just 1 sweet potato, which I have here, contains 4 times the amount of that vitamin A that we need for the day. Again, we're adding a lot of lovely color into this. So I'm going to add this in next. And give it another stir here. So some of you might have noticed I say vitamin. I grew up in England, and in England we say vitamin, and my husband is always telling me I no longer live there. I need to get with the program and call it vitamin. So the yams have a lot of vitamin A in them. Now, the next thing I'm going to add here are some tomatoes. And yes, sorry, tomatoes. Here I actually have 2 cans worth of diced tomatoes. And sorry, I'm going to say tomatoes. I'm used to saying that, and so I know you know what I mean anyway. So we're going to add the juices as well as this. What's actually interesting about tomatoes is that they contain lycopene. And when you cook them versus eating them raw, we actually absorb more of that lycopene into our bodies. Okay, so let's give this another stir. So additionally, we're going to add some salt here, and it's really salt to taste. So for people who have high blood pressure, you probably don't want to use very much at all. Most of us in America eat far too much sodium. I'm guilty of that. I love my salt. So we're going to try this mic instead. Don't you just love technology? Okay, we're going to keep this going here. Thank you. Maybe we'll switch it out, we'll see. The original recipe calls not only for salt, but for black pepper as well. Personally, I choose not to use black pepper in any of my cooking. It can damage that very delicate lining of the digestive tract, and I don't find that I need it, so I just totally skip that. So just give this another stir. Thank you. We'll see if the original microphone works here. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of let this simmer for a little bit. And while we're doing that, I'm going to make the sauce. Now, the sauce for this, and what really gives it the really good African flavor, is actually using peanut butter. Now, there's a lot of different types of peanut butter out there, and I really recommend that you read the ingredients. You would be surprised at how many peanut butters contain sugar. We don't need more sugar in our diets. So ideally, if you're going to use peanut butter one, it should be just peanuts or peanuts and salt. So I have here 1/3 cup of natural peanut butter. Now, I do recognize there are a lot of people who are allergic to peanut butter. And if that's the case, you can substitute sunflower seed butter instead. It doesn't have quite the same flavor, but it will still taste good. To this, I'm going to add my spices. So here I have 1½ teaspoons of chili powder. And although you can add it in here, I actually like adding it in the sauce because I find that it doesn't clump as much. It really becomes a lot nicer. The next thing I'm going to add is just 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Now again, cayenne pepper can be super hot. And so if you don't like spicy food, again, just skip it. This is for what you like to eat. So I'm going to add this as well. And then I'm just going to use my spatula here and kind of mix it together. Now it's a little bit thick at this point here. So what I'm going to do is add more of the vegetable broth that we were using before. One tip I found out, actually, most of us want to pour from this side, but if you pour from sort of the opposite side, it doesn't have that big glug glug, and so you're not going to spill it as much by doing it that way. So let's just mix this together. And you can add as much or as little as you want here. We are going to be adding the rest of the vegetable broth to the soup. So I think I'm going to add just a little bit more here. And I like to do it in stages. If I add too much at once, I don't find that it necessarily blends in as well. If I had a fork or a little whisk, that would work really well. What I'm doing right now is just kind of mushing it together. Okay, so at home I would do this a little bit more, but for the sake of time, we're going to pretend everything is really good. So I'm going to add this now to the rest of the ingredients that are in here. And again, we'll just mix that in. So now it's starting to change color because of the peanuts, and it's looking more like an actual African stew instead. The other thing to do, it actually calls for the entire package here of the vegetable broth. Most of the time, I double the recipe, and then my saucepan isn't big enough for me to put the whole thing in, so I only put half of it in, and then later on, if I want to thin it out, I can do that as well. Now, this you're going to simmer for probably 10 to 20 minutes. You want it, the diced sweet potato, when you take a fork to it, you want the fork to go in nicely so it's nice and tender. You don't want to have any of the hardness left when you do this. Now, the original recipe calls for the chickpeas to go in at the end. Now, chickpeas are also known as garbanzo beans as well, and they are a wonderful source of fiber. So adult men need a minimum of 38 grams of fiber per day. For women, it's only 25 grams of fiber, which isn't very much. And yet 97% of Americans aren't even getting that much. So 1 cup of chickpeas contains 12.5 grams of fiber. So it's a great way to really increase the amount of fiber that we're getting in our diet. Now, for people who want to lose weight, 40 grams of fiber today is actually a really good goal. One thing I will say, if you're not used to eating a lot of fiber, don't suddenly go from 5 grams a day up to 40 grams a day, or you might find you have some problems with that. You also want to increase the amount of water if you're increasing the amount of fiber that you're taking in as well. I know a lot of people find that they get a lot of gas from eating beans. So, you know, if you're one of those people who cannot tolerate beans, you can just leave it out. For a lot of people, though, they find that once they change the diet, the bacteria that we have in our GI tract changes as well. So where it might have created a lot of gas initially, it doesn't create nearly so much once they're used to eating that way. Now, again, I like to put my garbanzo beans in before the end of the cooking process because I find that they kind of plump up a little bit more. They're not quite as firm, and I like that softer texture in this soup. So I just put it in and let it simmer for the 10 to 20 minutes until it becomes fork tender. At that point, you can taste it again, and you might find, I need to add a little bit more salt. So again, the salt is really to your taste. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to let this simmer for 20 minutes here. Once it is done, though, the next thing that I will be adding in is about 2 handfuls of spinach. Now, spinach is wonderful. In fact, medical news today calls spinach a superfood, and it's not nearly as expensive as a lot of other things that are termed superfoods today. Just 1 cup of spinach contains only 7 calories. How great is that? Now, 1 cup of spinach also contains 250 milligrams of calcium. And so you might be thinking, oh, that's fantastic. It's a great calcium source. But we have to hold on a minute. Spinach also contains oxalates, and oxalates bind to that calcium, so you really cannot consider spinach to be a very good calcium source. This isn't ready for this to be added yet. You would do it again right at the end, and then the heat that's left over, it will just wilt it slightly. You don't need to cook this in. So this is an example of when it's done. Now, in this particular one, the spinach was not wilted in. But when you serve it, you can also serve it with roasted salted peanuts as well. And it just gives a nice crunch and an extra texture to it. So again, I hope if you've had any questions, you've been sending them in. This recipe is called Soul Soothing African Peanut Stew. And if you do an internet search for that, you can find it. It's from Oshi Glows. Or you can also write into us. If you write into Steps to Health, Chewelah, at gmail.com, we're more than happy to send you this recipe as well. So were there any questions that you have about this? I'm just going to give this another stir here. So I don't hear that anybody has questions. But yeah, I would encourage you to give this a try. As I said, it's one of my favorites. It also freezes really well. So if you make too much, freeze some, and then you don't, you've got an instant meal for another day. So I want to thank you for taking this time with us. We're going to be sending this back to Rosanna pretty soon so we can learn more of those amazing but simple recipes. So thank you. And again, if you have questions, please send them to us at stepstohealthchewelah@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura Lee. Now, while we are switching the microphone, does anyone have any comments or questions related to any of the things that we have presented so far? Well, it's awfully quiet around here. Okay, let's have the next slide on our PowerPoint. So now Rosanna is going to resume the natural remedies, starting with neck heating compress.
We do have one question, and it's what kind of illness is a poultice used for? A poultice, we're going to be doing the charcoal poultice, and that's something I'm going to be going over pretty quickly. The fomentation that we just finished is for flu, for colds, for any kind of aches, pains. You can chest congestion, especially this time of year. It's very effective and helps clear the lungs and passageways and that. And as far as the poultice, we're going to go over the charcoal poultice, but the next thing we're going to be doing is the, here we go, we're going to be doing the neck wrap. And is there a slide for that? A slide for the neck compress? It's called the neck heating compress. And basically, I don't know if when you were young, if you had a sore throat, I don't know what your mom may do for you, but my mom and dad would say, why don't you gargle with some hot salt water? And they would take a piece of cloth, just like this, and this is a piece of flannel cloth, and they would wet it. You can also use a wash rag, wet it with cold water. I'm going to be putting this around my husband's neck. Okay, and I'm putting the wet cloth around his neck, and then you're going to cover it with another piece of cloth that is dry. And this will be, it will absorb some of the moisture, but then you cover then, after that, with a wool sock. Just something simple that you have. You don't have to go out there again, don't have to go out and buy anything. And this will help. So you gargle with some hot salt water. We're going to tell you more about the charcoal tablets, but I will share this, is that I will put a couple, up to 4 charcoal tablets in my mouth cheeks, and I can go to sleep that way, but of course some people would not want to do that. They might choke or something, but I'm used to that. And so put 1 or 2 in your mouth. Charcoal will then absorb over the night and dissolve. And then the neck wrap also helps take away that sore throat. And you wake in the morning, and when you take it off, you're going to do the same thing as with the fomentation, which Dave is going to love this, but you rub down with the cold rag after. And this top cloth cloth will have gotten the neck warm, and you're going to have the same blood flow that we did in the fomentations. Rub down good, and then go ahead and dry with a towel. And then you can go on with the day. If you're still feeling kind of bad or coughing or whatever, you can go ahead and repeat it or whatever. And if you wake up with charcoal tablets still in your mouth, no problem. Just chew them up, swallow them down with some water. It's fine, because the charcoal will be adsorbing in your body, working throughout your body as well. And I failed to mention when I was doing the fomentations also, that if a person does have any heart disease or my sister's had open heart surgery, someone like that, if they were ever a fomentation to be done, you would want to put some ice on their heart area to keep from having any overheating or having any problems that way. So that would be one precaution too that I failed to mention. Okay, and so for our next slide, we're going to go with charcoal, and Dave is actually going to start out talking about charcoal right now, okay?
There's three main forms that charcoal comes in that we use at home. One is powder, the other one is capsules, and the other one is tablets. And they all have their purposes. But she's showing you the charcoal powder that comes in about a quart container, and then the tablets and the capsules just come in a bottle. One of the other things is that we want to remind you that when you use charcoal, especially the powder, it's very puffy. It'll blow around. So you want to be very careful how you use that. Just lightly, when we make a poultice, we'll take a tablespoon of it and put it in a cup, and then we'll stir it up and make a thick paste out of it, and then it'll be placed on a paper towel, and that keeps the charcoal from actually contacting your skin. Now, this is used for bee stings and things like that. Mosquito bites, some people react quite harshly to stings and things like that. I'll tell you, one time we had a friend when we were in the South, that the little girl was out playing around the mailbox, and underneath the mailbox was a nest of bees. Now, all bees are bees to me. They're yellow jackets or whatever. Anyway, she got stung about 15 times, just all over her. She was screaming and ran in the house. We immediately made up a charcoal paste and put it on all of her bites, and she immediately lost all the pain from that. And so it was an immediate response to the bee stings, and it worked very well. Another thing is that don't use charcoal on an open wound or scratch or something like that, because it will tattoo. You don't want to have the charcoal directly on an open cut or something like that. We had a friend's little boy was riding a toboggan, and he went under the pickup, and he bumped his head on the end of the exhaust pipe, and it left a permanent tattoo of the circle of the exhaust pipe on his forehead. And so those are some precautions. Also, another treatment for sore throat and intestinal problems is the charcoal slurry. And you just mix charcoal in a bottle, and here's one here. The charcoal is settled to the bottom, but the water is very good even for babies in a baby bottle if they're having a problem, so the thick charcoal doesn't get stuck in the nipple. Just pour the water off into a bottle, and that's very healing for a baby.
It's also, children sometimes don't like the grit. Is mine not on? Okay.
None of us like the grit, but anyway, we know it's good for us, and so we do it anyway.
The slurry is easier for children to use. Yeah. You can see the water separation from the charcoal.
Now, another thing is, let me see here. Okay, for spider bites, things like that. I just read today in one of the books that the brown recluse spider the only known remedy for brown recluse spider has been charcoal applied quickly and often. Change it often. The only other treatment for brown recluse is excision or surgery to remove it, because it destroys the flesh around the bite. And so immediately applied charcoal on there, that has been known, and all they come out sometimes with just a purple spot where that bite was. And so that's something to think about. Another thing is for poisoning, when you go to a hospital, one of the first thing they'll do is give you charcoal, but charcoal adsorbs, it draws in, it sucks like a sponge any of the poisons. One of the wonderful things about charcoal, it doesn't take the vitamins out of your things, out of your body or that. It just takes the poisons. It's very smart stuff. It's amazing. And so just we found it to be a very beneficial to us.
Okay, now if we could.
Okay.
Oh, a question?
Where do you buy charcoal?
Okay, charcoal, we find it we get ours in Walla Walla at Andy's Market, but it's available in different places.
From New Lifestyle, it's Yuchi Pines, has it in the big bottle, but this comes from Walla Walla. You can get it online as well. Dave, it's just, yeah, you want me to talk alone? Okay. And this is the charcoal capsules here, tablets, I'm sorry, and then the capsules. Now, I don't know if you can pick up and see what it actually looks like. How can I show this? Anyway, these are the tablets. The capsules you can take, the capsules are stronger than the tablets. So, and also, Dave was talking about bites and that, and just so you know, if you have a bite or a snake or anything like that, any poisons, you want to be sure and wash it with soap and water first as well. Okay, and then
Yes.
okay. Okay, I want to demonstrate that right now because we're running out of time. So, pardon me?
Okay, we're going to demonstrate the use of a poultice. She's going to make the charcoal
If you can. Okay,
paste.
you put the charcoal in a cup, and you do about a tablespoon, and then you pour a little bit of water because you don't want to make it too thin, and you just stir it around, and it powders. I don't know if you can see it very well or not, but it powders up, and you just add a little bit at a time, because if you get it too thin, then it just runs out of your paper towel. And, oh boy. Okay, so I wish we could show how my fingers are probably in the way. Anyway, it is a little bit thin. But and you want to, here's a chunk of it like that. You want to put it on the paper towel. And you want it thick as you can get it. There you go. And then you just fold it over. And now charcoal will seep out of here. You can put flaxseed meal with it as well, but then you apply it to the spider bite or whatever. You just put it right on there. You can use a piece of plastic to hold it in place, or you can use an ace wrap or whatever you need to do. And if it is very poisonous, you want to change that about every 5 minutes, up to 10 minutes to 15 minutes. And then also, at the same time with this, because I've not drank this or anything, I could even add water to this and take it internally as well, and it would be very effective because it adsorbs the poisons, and that is the beautiful thing about charcoal. Or you can use an ace wrap on it as well. Now, the other thing, we're running out of time, so if you have any more questions, there is a list of things. The book, any book you get will talk about you can use it for diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, gas, of course, the bites, and drug overdose. He mentioned if you go to emergency room, they will often put charcoal down you. And then also now we have a hot foot bath. I just want to show you specifically what all you need. Where it's like the fomentation. You don't have to have a lot of equipment. You use the same towels, everything as before. You have the water real hot, and hot as the patient can stand it. And we're just doing a dry run. This does not have the water in it. But you have a tea kettle nearby, so you don't have to run and get that. You have the person still drinking water like we did in a fomentation. And then if Dave gets his feet cold, he will end up with a cold often. And so this is a real quick way to take care of that. And then if the water gets cool, then you're going to bring his feet out of the tub, pour more hot water in there, and make sure you test it, make sure it does not burn the patient. You want to, also something I have not done is to keep the person from being chilled, you would have them wrapped in a blanket as well, and have them warm so they're not chilled, and do the hot foot baths, and then afterwards you do the cold pour. You take this ice water that you've used, and you could have a rag on his forehead just like a fomentation, and it's going to help eliminate waste. And then you actually pour the cold ice water over. You finish off with cold. That's the main thing we're trying to share with you. And then you just wipe their feet down, dry their feet very well, put socks back on them, and let them rest in bed.
One thing I'd like to mention too is that charcoal absorbs anything and everything. And so our friend made a charcoal slurry water to drink. She drank about half and said, well, I'll just set it on the counter, I'll drink it in the morning. She came up in the morning, she just downed the rest of it, but it had been sitting by the compost, and it tasted like compost when she drank it. So you don't want to leave any charcoal open. Use what you have. I ask her not to leave the lids open on the powder. Keep them, because they will draw in everything, anything. Mm-hmm. So if it's sitting by garlic, it's going to taste like garlic, okay? So it's just the wonderful property that it has. So be really careful that you keep all the capsules, tablets, and the powder all sealed up when they're not in use.
I will go ahead, and if you will get on Steps to Health, Chewelah.com. Is that the right address? Steps to Health. Gmail, sorry. If you need to have any more information, how to get products, the books, anything like that, please let me know, and let us know. And then also, we wanted to just briefly share about the hot and cold shower. If you don't have someone in your home that can help you with a fomentation, a hot and cold shower is very effective as well. And of course, that means turning the warm water on just as warm as you can take it, as hot as you can allow it to stimulate your body and get you sweating and that. And then you do that, and you stay in there till you're plenty warm, at least a minute and a half, and then you turn the cold water over to as cool as you can take it as well. And that sometimes may take 10 seconds, it may take 20 seconds, and the best thing to do is go ahead and circle around in the shower. Now, if you get dizzy with that or whatever, then you want to go ahead and you can just put your head under, but make sure you get your back and your front with the shower, with the hot and the cold. Make sure you're warm so you're not chilled. And this also, it boosts your immune system, helps you with colds and different things that happen, that you're just wanting to feel better. And that's very effective. This here talks about, too, basically what I just said. And then you end with the cold to close the pores and have a good reaction, and then rest afterwards. And it shows on this slide that it prevents colds, helps free up the mind. It does a lot of stimulates even the antidepressant hormones. There's another question.
Fomentations have been used by a doctor to treat and lessen the symptoms of COVID at the early stages of infection.
Yes, fomentations if used can lessen the infections and that as well, yes. And there are doctors that do use these fomentations. A lot of people are not aware of them. And of course, because hospitals are so busy, when I took nursing and that, we used fomentations on patients. We had fomentation packs. They don't really use that. Physical therapy, that kind of thing, was used a lot more than it is now. But you can do it in your home, and it's effective as well. Just simple things that don't take a lot of money, take a little bit of time, but it also helps on the doctor's bills, and just helps you to feel better, and boosting that immune system is really important right now, especially.
One caution about taking the charcoal internally. Do not take it with medications. It will absorb, medications are poison to the body, and so charcoal will draw it back out. So you don't want to take it with it. Take it between meals or whenever, if you're taking medication with meals, then take your charcoal in betweens.
A couple hours.
Yeah, so that you don't draw any of the effectiveness or whatever of the medication that you might be on.
Okay, and then just to finish off with the charcoal too, of course, you just want to wipe them off because you could have some, you don't want it to get on the clothing, and so and this didn't at this time, but basically you just want to go ahead and just wipe the skin down, same thing, cold, and then you can dry it off. Any other questions? Thank you so much. What a blessing it is to share simple things that we've used in our home, and we hope that you'll be able to use them in your home too.
Thank you very much, Rosanna. Can we have the next PowerPoint slide? Now Carol is going to demonstrate how to bake sourdough bread. It's a real sourdough bread. There are a lot of bread that are sold at the market with the name of sourdough bread, but a lot of them are not real sourdough bread. Anyway, the fomentation, or hot bath and cold shower to follow, it's most effective when you're exposed to COVID-19. If you started right away, it's more effective. And even after, when you start getting symptoms, if you started right away, it's more effective. There are few days of window between the time you get symptoms and you get real sick. Well, most of them don't get sick, but if you're going to get sick, it'll be few days down the line. So if you do this hydrotherapy at the earlier stage, it activates the natural killer cells, and it's more effective. Now Carol's ready.
Okay, hello. This is our last food demonstration, and it's gone so fast. And where is my PowerPoint driver? Sorry about that. Okay, not yet. Okay. So to do a sourdough bread, you need a sourdough starter. I did not include it in this demonstration for the lack of time. I cheated. I got my sourdough starter from my daughter. But there are many places online that you could look up, and one of them is King Arthur's bread company. It has very detailed direction how to make this, and I think it takes several days. But that's what you have to start with. And this takes 2 days, actually. And some parts you have to be on top of it every hour on the hour. So not to scare you, it just takes that discipline to know that 1 hour is coming up and you have to do something. But night before, this is night before, you need to put your sourdough starter, you have to feed it. You have to feed 1/2 cup of white bread flour with 1/2 cup of water, and leave it on your counter so that it will get nice and bubbly and ready for use the next day. And the next day, you're going to mix the doughs together. The total amount of flour you need is 880 grams. this is not one of those things where you could just throw in stuff together. You have to measure it on scale. So you have to get a scale. And what I do is that I have bought this whole wheat from an organic farmer, and I grind this or mill this. And a lot of you are seasoned bread makers. I'm sure you have a mill, and somehow it makes the bread taste better. And so I have 440 grams of whole wheat bread flour and 440 grams of white bread flour, white unbleached bread flour. And the water is 650 grams. And I should do that. PowerPoint, please. So there you have it, 440 grams of each and 650 grams of water. This is 50-50, but you could do 60-40 or 80-20, depending on how you would like to make your bread. The only thing is that if you put more of the wheat, whole wheat, then you need less water. Surprisingly, it's because the whole wheat absorbs water more. And if you put more of the white flour, then you have to add more flour. So what I'm doing here is 650 grams, but it could go up to 700. So it'd be between 700 to 650 grams of water. So I have it mixed right here because I had grounded it this morning, which I shouldn't. And these are the flours I use, this and this, that I have milled this morning. So what's easiest is to put water first in a bowl, and then dump all your flours. And it takes a bit of a muscle to mix it all together so that it's all incorporated. And it might look a little dry, which is fine because you're going to add your starter next. After you have mixed all this in, you're going to let it rest for 1 hour. So we're starting that 1 hour program here. And so it looks pretty dry, and it doesn't look very, smooth either, but that's fine because that's the way how it's supposed to look. So I have to clean this spoon out. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to knead it too much. And cover it and let it rest. Put your saran wrap over it. And I like to make the saran wrap a little bit longer, and you'll see why later. So I have here, and while you are letting it rest, now you're going to measure your starter. So here's our trusty scale, and we're going to tare, and we're going to measure out the starter. And for starter, I have to give you the next slide. Okay, good. So the starter is 132 grams. So I'm going to measure out 132 grams just to show you how much that would be. So almost all of it. So that's about 132 grams right there, like so. And I have already measured out the honey and the salt. And if you look, is the PowerPoint still on there? Can you get the PowerPoint? Okay, so salt is 20 grams, and honey is about 5 to 6 grams. And this you're going to add to the dough that has been resting for an hour, which I am not going to do because if I start this process, then I would have to stay all night mixing the stuff. So you have this leftover starter, and the starters like very clean environment. So we have to put it into a very clean jar. So I don't have much left, but which is fine because it keeps growing. And once you make the starter, you know, you have it for life, actually, if you keep feeding it. So you would use a paper towel and cover it and secure it with the rubber band, and this is going to go back into the refrigerator. So I have here the mixture. Remember, we had this mixture, and then I had put all this in, and if you leave it for an hour, this is how it looks like. This is another hour process. I'll put this over here. So this has been here for about an hour, and now we're going to transfer it to a casserole dish. A point here is that you have to wet your hands because this stuff is so sticky without wetting your hands that you wouldn't know what to do with. So before you dive into this thing, this dough, we're going to wet our hands very thoroughly and then pick up this dough here and put it in. And this is going to start what they call coiling, which is actually kneading for the sourdough, which is just stretching it, and it doesn't look very incorporated yet, but you stretch it and you kind of coil it together and make a nice ball and leave it for an hour. This you're going to have to do every hour on the hour, at least 5 hours, 5 to 7 hours. And remember the long piece of saran wrap? This is not quite that long. You cover it and leave it for an hour. So I'll put this here, and I have a dough here that has been coiling since this morning, stretching and rolling this morning. And so this is what it looks like. And when you pull the thing out, it's going to stick, but don't worry, it comes right off. And let's see. PowerPoint, please. Let's review it. So I've added the honey and salt and the starter to the dough and covered the dough and left it for an hour. And that's what we had. And then, next one. So that's where we just did, which was to scrape the dough onto the casserole dish, and we wet our hands and we did the rolling. So now we're on to stretching. This is what it's going to look like after a few hours. It looks very pliable and very soft, and you stretch it and you roll it, and you roll it from this side and then make a nice round dough like so. And this has been going on for over 5 hours, so I could use this to make the next step. So remember to wet your hands or else you're going to be in trouble. So we cover this for now. And we're going to move on to preparing the basket. This is called Benetton basket. It's made specifically for the sourdough. Let's see what it looks like. So, PowerPoint, please. We're going to review what we just did. So we took the cover off and we stretched it and coiled it and made it into a little ball. And now we're going to prepare the, okay, so that's another one, another picture. We're going to prepare the proofing basket. So you don't have to get these. I didn't think I would be making this every week. If you had told me last year that I would be making this bread every week, I would have said you are crazy. But once you got into the roll, and once you tasted how wonderful it was, then you continue to make. And you also have to have a really good cheerleader, because the first, bread that I made, it looked terrible, but it tasted the way it's supposed to. And so the cheerleader said, oh, just keep making it, you'll get used to it. So I invested in these baskets. But when I didn't have it, I used what was at hand, which was a colander and just a clean dishcloth to use it as a liner, like so. So you really don't need to have a basket, but if you want to have a nice, round, beautiful bread, then you have to get one of these. So this is a liner, which I should have put it in earlier. And we're going to put some sprinkles of non-gluten flour, because if you put a glutinous flour, the dough is going to react to it and it's going to stick all over this lining. So we need to kind of sprinkle it with non-gluten flour like so. And then we're ready to make the dough into a nice round ball. And I do need this water because it's going to stick to my hands. So we'll go back to our, here, not the other one, this one, this dough. This much dough makes 2 9-inch bread, 9-inch round bread, sourdough bread. And let's see, where's my olive? This is where you have your options. We're going to stretch this dough out to fill the casserole. And we're going to cut it in half, which you could be really rough like this. And where this is my extra, so I'll put it here. And let's stretch this out. And this is where you could put in either olives or walnuts and raisins or roasted garlic, whatever you like. And just however much you want to put in is, I put in so that there's enough in every bite, so to speak. But this is where you kind of eyeball it. And then you roll it, and then, okay, you have to get all the olives in there. And then you make it into a nice ball like this, like so, and put it into our Benetton basket. And then we have to put some more non-glutinous flour over it so it won't be sticking. So after this, you're going to cover it with a shower cap. Now, this is not from your shower. This is a brand new one, and for sanitary reasons. And you cover it and put it in the refrigerator overnight. So this is where I'm going to start the PowerPoint continuously, because I did not have the one from last night. It would have been too long a period for me to bring. So, PowerPoint. Okay, so going back to the steps that I just went through, stretch out the dough in the pan, cut the dough in half, and then put your filling in, and you make it into a bowl, and you put it on the basket, and sprinkle the non-glutinous flour over the dough, and we cover it with a, with a shower cap. Shower cap always works the best, but you could use plastic bag if you like. And then next day, you take it out of the oven, take it out of the refrigerator, and I should show you. You cut a piece of parchment paper and turn the, can you still put it on the PowerPoint, please? You put it on the parchment paper. Can I have the PowerPoint? Oh yeah, thank you. And turn it over, and then you put it on a 9-inch skillet, cast iron skillet, and cut the extra parchment paper around it, because if you have it sticking up, then it might burn, and you don't want that in your oven. And first of all, I forgot to tell you, you have to turn your oven on to 450 degrees and put a little pan under the very bottom rack. I know it's very hot. Oh, question?
Yeah, how do you clean the liner for the venison basket once you're done?
Liner?
Yeah.
You just rinse it in water and rinse it really well, and rinse it right away, or else it gets really sticky. So you have to rinse it right away. But water does the trick, and you just have to air dry it. Okay, back to the PowerPoint, please. I only have a minute. Okay, so we have the dough in the skillet with a parchment paper. Now you have to score it. Why scoring it? Because you don't want the bread to crack wherever it wants to. And you could make a scoring with a sharp knife or a scoring utensil that those sourdough, it comes with a basket. But my secret is that the surgical scalpel works the best. And you don't have to make a fancy cut. You just have to do cross or a squiggly line or whatever. And the oven is ready. Put the bread in, and get your 1 cup of cold water ready, because you're going to put it in the bottom rack where the pan is, and so that it will be nice and moist. And it takes about 30 minutes, but I put it on convection setting. But if you don't have a convection setting, I think it'll take a little bit longer, so it'll be between 30 to 40 minutes. And then, voila, you got your bread, but you have to test the bread to see if it is actually thoroughly baked. So turn the bread over and tap it on the bottom. If it sounds hollow, then it is done. So this bread goes really well with African peanut stew. So, and one thing about storing it, you have to let the bread cool completely, or else it's going to sweat. And I like to put it in a paper bag like this. Here's the baked bread. And after you put it in a paper bag, then you put it in the Ziploc bag, and you could keep it in the refrigerator or in your freezer, and it will last. But you have to keep checking it because you don't want the bread to be sweating or be condensing inside. So I hope you enjoyed this bread. And if you are serious about making it, you want to have a starter, please let me know. I would love to share my starter with you. If you are in driving distance from Chewelah Church. Okay. That's all.
Thank you, Carol. Any more questions? I'll go ahead and show the next slide. So today's program concludes our 4-part series, Health Talks on Physical Health. But there are 3 more series coming up for the rest of this year. As you know, we humans are integrated beings with physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects. And each aspect will affect all the other aspects. So in our second series that's coming up in 2 weeks, we're going to be focusing on emotional health. And initially we'll focus on depression in adults and children and how to alleviate the symptoms. And later presentations will include communication and anger and conflict resolution. These classes will start in 2 weeks, March 14 at 3 p.m. We will follow the same format, and each class will meet every other Sunday. You can join us on the same YouTube channel, that's Chewelah SDA, and Zoom login will probably stay the same, but for the latest update, check at our church website, which is www.chewelaadventist.org, or write to us at our email address, stepstohealthchewela@gmail.com. So, any final comments or questions? We're a little bit over time, but if there's any questions, we'll take them. All right, let's close with a short prayer. Our Father, we thank you for all the blessings and provisions that you give to us. You're a kind Heavenly Father who wishes nothing but the best for us. Until we meet again, we ask that you keep us safe and healthy. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So we'll see you in 2 weeks, same place, same time.